Hello, I'm Refandi Chika Octaviano, and today I will present you my presentations. So let's begin. Part one, number one, culture shock. The culture shock refers to the psychological and emotional disorientation individual face when transitioning to a markedly different cultural environment. This experience manifests as insecurity, anxiety, and frustration, primarily arising from interpretation of unfamiliar social cues rather than being a mere inconvenience. Culture shock represents a profound psychological response to the new cultural context. The theoretical foundations, pioneering work by Colorful Oberts in 1960 identified culture shocks as an occupational disease. For those suddenly transplanted abroad, outlining its identifiable symptoms, cause, and potential avenues for recovery. Ober's frameworks laid to the groundwork for understanding the typical adaptation process. Sever Lychgard further contributed with his U-curve theory in 1955, which postulates distinct states of cultural adaptation and initial period of euphoria, followed by frustration and ultimately adaptation. Later development expanded this to a four-stage model, often including the honeymoon, negotiation, adjustment, and mastery. The honeymoon stage is marked by excitement and fascination with the new culture. This initial enthusiasm often gives way to the negotiation stage, where the unfamiliarity of custom, language barriers, and daily challenges lead to feelings of frustration, confusion, and loneliness. During the adjustment phase, individual begins to understand and cope with the new cultural cues, finding routines and developing coping mechanisms. Finally, in the mastery stage, a deeper appreciation and integration into the new culture are achieved, allow the individual to navigate both their native and adopted culture with greater ease. Great hosted cultural dimension also provide a valuable lens for understanding the underlying cross-cultural difference that contribute to the intensity and nature of culture. For example, I have two examples. This first example is Maria experience as exchange students in Japan illustrate the typical pace of culture shock. Her initial excitement for Tokyo lively atmosphere marks the honeymoon phase, which transition into the crisis stage characterized by difficulty in navigating complex social etiquette, indirect communication, and language barriers. This challenge led to feelings of isolation and frustrations, aligning with Ober's and Lisgard's model of culture shocks. The cognitive and emotional strain from decoding unfamiliar social cues highlights how unfamiliar culture symbol can become ambiguous. The second example, the Khan family migration from Pakistan to rural Canada reflects a comparable cultural adjustment process. Their initial optimism soon turns to street due to the climatic difference, unfamiliar social norms, and limited English proficiency. This places them in the negotiation phase of culture shock, manifesting as isolations, loss of social status, and identity challenge. The parents face difficulty in forming social networks, while the children encounter obstacles in schools, illustrating that culture shock impacts both individual and families, affecting overall psychological well-being and social integration. Number two, gesture. Gestures are a crucial, often subconscious aspect of human communication, involving nonverbal movement, especially of the hand and arms to convey ideas, emotion, and intentions. More than simple hand waving, gestures are intimately connected to speech and cognition, offering significant information that enhance verbal communications. For theoretical foundations, David McNeil, a prominent researcher, posits that language and gesture are inherently interconnected. Stemming from a shared conceptual foundation, he introduced the notion of speech-gesture unity, emphasizing their integration in the process of meaning making. McNeil asserts that gesture reveal a speaker's knowledge and experience originating from a growth point where to and speech coverage. Gesture can be classified into several types based on their function and relation to speech. The first is emblem, culture-specific gesture with a direct verbal translation that's substituted for words. Example, thumbs up for a good job. Second, illustrators. This accompany speech to enhance or clarify the verbal message, such as stressing an object shape while describing it. The third is regulators, used to manage conversational flow, like nodding to prompt a speaker or raising a hand to signal to. Fourth, adapter, often unconscious gesture that mitigate tensions, such as feeding with object or scratching one's head. And last, affect display, a gesture expressing emotions like a hand over the mouth in surprise or clenched fist in an anger. So I will give two examples. The first, the use of traffic control hand signals exemplifies gesture as a standardized symbol with clear meanings. For instance, an outstretched palm indicating stop and waving motion signaling go serve as direct replacement for verbal comments. Their effectiveness stems for the conventional and cross-cultural recognition within traffic system, enabling communication in high-risk situations where spoken language may be impractical. This gesture highlight how nonverbal signs can provide clarity, efficiency, and authority, thus upholding social order and public safety through shared cultural meanings. The second, in Japanese, bowing etiquette illustrate the contextual and cultural interactions of gesture. Bowing serves as both a greeting and an apology while also expressing respect, humility, and social hierarchy, with variations in depth and duration conveying different meanings. This gesture is integral to Japanese social norms, where its executions reflect an individual's awareness of relation status and situational context, unlike traffic signal, which focus on universal clarity. Bowing encapsulates subtle social psychological nuances, demonstrating how gesture can convey both conventional meanings and complex interpersonal dynamics. Part 2, just study. So, in the part 2, I will solve the or its problem. And the first of all, I will solve the first case study, the startup of Chinese in Indonesia. For the task number one, the the answer is the stereotype in this case is a positive stereotype depicting Chinese individual, including those of Chinese Indonesian descent like Shenzhen, as a naturally adept in mathematics, business, and commerce. Although this stereotype appears beneficially by attributing traits such as competence and success, it is not a natural cultural assumptions, but rather a specific ethnic stereotype shaped by historical and cultural context that inspires education and entrepreneurship. This positive framing can still be detrimental as it overlooks individual difference and impose ethnic basis expectation rather than recognizing personal abilities and interests. For number two, Number two, the stereotype impose significant negative impact on sense across various dimensions. The first is emotional impacts. Sensen may experience frustration, anxiety, or self-doubt due to assumption about her abilities in math or business. Such expectations can lead to internal pressures diminishing her self-esteem if she fails to conform. Second, social impact. Socially, the stereotype may cause isolation or misunderstanding, as friends and family might assign her tasks based on this assumption, straining relationships and reducing her to her ethnicity than recognizing her individuality. The academic impacts. It creates under pressures, compelling her to pursue math-related fields despite lacking interest or aptitude. This misalignment can result in poor performance and discourage her from exploring other areas where she could excel. And cultural impacts. Culturally, it perpetuates a monolithic perception of Chinese Indonesians, neglecting the diversity with the Peranakan community and broader Indonesian society. This can foster prejudice and intergroup tensions, making Chen feel aliened for her cultural identity. So the for the answers for question three, although predominantly harmful, this prototype may present limited benefit in certain contexts, albeit overshadowed by its negative implication. The first is opportunities for advancements. Positive stereotype may provide access to opportunities such as a combination for roles in mathematics or business. For individual like Sense Chen, this might enhance confidence and career prospect if there is interest in these fields. Support from family in pursuing education in quantitative areas could lead to unexpected achievement. From cultural pride, some individuals may derive pride from their heritage if they excel in stereotypical domains, reinforcing the notion that their background is a sort of strength and fostering solidarity within the Chinese Indonesian community. For for number four, the stereotype that Chinese Indonesian, particularly Peranakan, possess inherent capabilities in mathematics, business, and financial management due to their ethnic background. This reflects the broader model minority stereotype attribute to Asian groups, which overlook individual difference. Such assumption limit perception of Shenzhen by confining her identity to these perceived competencies, causing others to discard her actual difficulty with number of discerners in business. Consequently, she may face unsocialized inquiries for financial advice or expectation to manage finances based solely on her ethnicity. This creates a disconnect between her self-perception and external expectation, resulting in feelings of misunderstanding of pressure. These dynamics are prevalent in Indonesia society, where startup of Chinese Indonesian often emphasize economic success, contributing to both admirations and underlying tensions, as evidenced by research conducted in post-reformasi Indonesia. Next, for part B, I will explain a summary based on the presentation given by Will King. So, the summarize is a core challenge in a cross-cultural communication, the mismatch between intention and interpretations, where identical words or phrases carries different meaning across culture. This is especially evident in English communications between Indonesians and British speakers, as cultural norms shapes how messages are sent and received. In Indonesia, a high context collective social communication prioritizes harmony and indirectness to avoid confrontations, while the UK, the British, a low context individualist culture favor directness for clarity and efficiency. So to align intention and interpretations, Mr. Wilking adopts adaptable approach that respect both style as suggested in the text and supported by research. By this, start with the first is start with strengths. Begin feedback with a positive like sentence. This idea is strong to build rapport, reducing defensiveness in indirect culture. Second is suggest improvements gently. Use qualifiers like maybe we can improve by to soften directness aligning with Indonesian harmonious needs. Invite input. Ask, what do you think? To encourage participation, bridging in the individualism collectivism gaps. Then the last is checks, understandings, and with are we aligning to confirm clarity, preventing misinterpretation in high context settings. For the third case study, uh, for the third case study, for number one, the scenario illustrates how body language can provoke culture shock, revealing the disorienting contrast between familiar and unfamiliar nonverbal signal in a new culture setting. Culture shock arises when individuals encounter surprising differences in social norms, resulting in confusion and a sense of alienation. In this case, Armand's interpretation of the open hand wave of a stop signal, rooted in Indonesian culture, conflict with a fairly intense in American culture. This disparity exemplifies how body language, often unconscious and culturally ingrained, can disturb communication and amplify feelings of discoloration. Variance in the meanings of gesture complicate cross-cultural exchange, as this signal depends on context-specific unspoken rules. In Indonesia, the open hand gesture conveys cautions or interruptions due to the local custom emphasizing politeness and directness. In contrast, the US it serves as a casual greeting, reflecting a more informal and individualistic culture. Such differences can lead to misunderstanding, highlight the importance of nonverbal cues in first resting or hindering interpersonal connection. The second test is historical context, social norms, and communication styles significantly influence the meaning of body language, resulting in different interpretation of the same gesture across culture. In Indonesia, the open hand wave is associated with authority and caution, serving as a stop signal aligning with a collective peace value and hierarchically resolution. This reflects a more reserved communication style, prioritizing harmony and the avoidance of confrontation. Typical of Southeast Asian culture, conversely, in the United States, the wave signified a casual greeting, rooted in individualistic egalitarian ideals that value friendliness and openness. American culture promotes rapid connection among diverse populations, viewing such gesture as inclusive. The contrasting interpretation of the same basic action, signaling stop in Indonesia and hello in the US, underscore body language as a cultural code rather than a universal form of communication. The third answer is the misunderstanding may negatively impact Amran's social interaction, creating emotional barriers that implied his adaptation. The first is embarrassment. Yes, Amran's hesitation or awkward reaction, such as withdrawing or ignoring gesture, may be misinterpreted as unfriendly by his American friend, leading to mutual embarrassment and challenging start to their relationship. Second, anxiety and self-doubt. Concerns about appearing rude or misleading gesture may increase Armand's anxiety, causing him to overanalyze social interaction and feel disconnected, which could undermine his confidence in cross-cultural context. The third, miscommunication and isolation. Armand's avoidance of response or inappropriate action could lead to miscommunication with his friends, perceiving his as aloof, potentially resulting in fewer social invitations and deeper connection, thus isolating him from the group. And the last, social hesitation. Over time, this could manifest as a social withdrawal, where Arman limits his interaction to avoid mistake, restricting his cultural exposure and reinforcing discomfort as means the misunderstanding heightens culture shock and impede effective communication. For the last part, to address this misunderstanding and enhance cross-cultural interaction, Arman can adopt several strategies. The first is clarification. He may ask a straightforward question, such as, is that a wave or something else? To clarify the gesture without causing offense, fostering open dialogue and alleviating confusion. The second, observation of social cues. By attentively observing the behaviors of others, such as tone, facial expression, and follow-up action, Arman can discern the context behind gesture, enabling him to adapt more readily. The third, familiarization with common gestures. Arman could explore American nonverbal norms through cultural guides or apps, focusing on common gesture to better anticipate meanings and prevent further misunderstanding. And the last is a cultural awareness practice. Participating in a cultural exchange activities such as language classes or intercultural workshops can cultivate Arman's empathy and adaptability, transforming potential culture shocks into growth opportunities.